If you have the data, if you're confident that you're not missing any key donors, and you can produce a list of supporters over a certain level, or in different categories of support, whether it be individuals, foundations, corporations, whatever your supporter base looks like, I think that's a key element.
From your perspective, like if I say donate $1,000 and I don't see my name there, how likely am I to get pissed off and say I don't matter? You're back. It's been not too long since we last spoke, and yeah, I'm just excited to hear your thoughts on sponsorship and the different dynamics between the different types of funders.
Another key function for an annual report is it's a great way to recognize donors and contributors to the organization. So if you have the data, if you're confident that you're not missing any key donors, and you can produce a list of supporters over a certain level, or in different categories of support, whether it be individuals, foundations, corporations, whatever your supporter base looks like, I think that's a key element. And in some cases, that is something that some funders, maybe even some individual donors, are looking for. They get the annual report, they flip to the page, they want to see their name there, and if they don't, then that sends a really bad message to them that their support doesn't matter. But if they see it, it's most people are not in this, especially individual donors, they're not doing it for that recognition. But if you can show them a bit of love by including them in your supporter list, that helps to go a long way in terms of stewardship as well.
And at what threshold do you think it's important to include them?
That is very dependent on the organization. So if you're talking about a really large post-secondary institution, a university, or let's say a big hospital foundation, that threshold might be, say, 5,000 and above, something along those lines. Could be even higher depending on the institution. For smaller organizations, maybe it's 100 plus. It really depends. It really depends on the organization, what that supporter base looks like. I know some organizations that have very small donor bases that include anyone who made a contribution throughout the year. So it really is dependent on the size of the organization, the number of donors, the level at which people are giving. But I'd say, the more you can do in that respect, the better, just because it's never a bad idea to recognize someone unless they've told you they don't want to be recognized.
No, Sarah, it's interesting because when I talk to the comms people, they see, oh well, there's a big list of names, it takes up so much space, like let's cut it, right? Yeah. So it's interesting to hear from your perspective, and from your perspective, like if I say donate $1,000 and I don't see my name there, how likely am I to get pissed off and say I don't matter?
I think some people would be very pissed off and probably voice that to the CEO or someone, development director, whoever their contact is. Others may just sort of shrug it off, but regardless of whether they have a really visceral reaction, I think it just sends a bad message. So that's why I've been with organizations where our data wasn't the best, and so in terms of generating that sort of recognition piece, I would limit it to higher donors, level donors that we were sure we had everyone included. Whereas if there were people were giving in different ways, and there was, maybe the data wasn't all in a nice clean database somewhere, which, in some larger organizations, multi-level organizations, there's a chance that could be the case. And people don't always, if you're doing an annual report for a legal entity that's part of an umbrella of an organization, the donor may not care or realize that. So if you go back to an organization like VON, when I was there, we had it was a bigger organization in terms of the number of charitable entities that existed within that name. Now, to the donor, it's VON. It doesn't matter if it's VON, Middlesex Elgin branch in London, or if it's VON Foundation at the national level. It was all the same to them. So if they were to pick up a report and not see they had just made a generous gift, and they didn't see that, then it could, again, it sends the wrong message, and it may generate some ill feelings about the organization. It basically sends a message that they don't care about my gift, even if they're not there because their name is there. But if the name's not there, they may recognize that, and it may send them the wrong message.
So what about like in terms of corporate sponsorship? Like what you see a lot is like, like the gold, silver, bronze levels. How are you able to leverage that to say like, say like Home Depot, for example, say they were a sponsor and they're a bronze level. How can you leverage like, well, this company is at the silver level, gets this. How can you leverage kind of those tiers to kind of play off the different corporate sponsors to try and, squeeze a little bit more out of them?
I think there's an implied message there, like whenever you're recognizing people or corporate supporters at different levels like that, like if it's bronze, silver, gold, or if it's dollar, the 50,000 platinum plus or something like that, that sends a message and they will look for those things, right? If you're talking, if Home Depot was at a certain level and they saw that Rona was giving more than they were, that's a direct competitor, they would notice that. So there's that implied piece. And then I think it may, depending on the relationship, it could come up in a conversation as well. And something like, here's an example. This is what we've done with another company in your space. We'd like to see you match that, or, something along those lines. It really depends on the circumstance. But at the very least, I would say, because it's out there, whether it's in an annual report or if you have a donor list on your website, wherever that happens to be, they will notice those things.
Yeah. See, like I see, like if say Home Depot was like a bronze level sponsor, I'd want to get on the phone with Rona and be like, hey, so Home Depot's a bronze, we want to get you as a silver. I'd imagine that I'd be playing off the competition with each other. I'm sure it's a little bit more of a delicate conversation.
It is, yeah. Yeah. And you have to know, like there are some companies where there is that level of competition between them when they're in a similar space, and then there's others where they don't feel that it's important. So I think about circumstances. For example, I've been involved through the years with different organizations who were part of United Way campaigns, and they're going back a number of years ago when I grew up and I lived in Windsor, Ontario. The unions and the automakers, the Detroit Three, whatever they're called, they would play off each other, right? So if Chrysler and Local 444 union of Unifor was leading the charge in terms of the campaign, they would want to do everything they could to beat the Ford campaign. Right? So there is that element of competition where you can really play on that in some cases because that does motivate them and they do care. And then there's others where like Home Depot may look at something Rona's doing and say, well, whatever, we have a different focus from our corporate philanthropy, corporate responsibility.
Yeah, when it comes, like I've often wondered, like if I like say like like Ford and Nissan and like all these other companies are getting involved, would like Ford be able to raise their hand and say, we're going to come in as a platinum sponsor, but we want to not have these other guys involved. We want to be exclusive in our industry.
Yeah, it could be. There are certain levels or certain programs, certain organizations where there is a level that allows exclusivity in a certain area. And you see that a lot, for example, with events. If you had a fundraising event where, let's go back to the auto industry, Ford was the title sponsor for an event in a community, that title sponsorship would most likely come with exclusivity as a benefit to say, we won't have any other automaker as part of this particular event. It would have to be at an extreme level for that organization for them to say, we'll never involve another automaker as long as you're around. But certainly when it comes to events or certain pieces of the work if you're looking at organizations that have bricks and mortar, they may say at a certain level you are considered the title sponsor, that you're recognized as having a wing or a department of a building, that you wouldn't necessarily have Ford and Chrysler right next to each other in a building. Like there's that sort of thing, but that's obviously at a level that that would make it appropriate to have that kind of exclusivity.
Right. No, that's amazing. Yeah. So thank you so much, Jeff.
My pleasure.